Good afternoon, everyone. I am Commerce Next co-founder Veronica Sansev, and on behalf of my fellow co-founders Scott Silverman and Alan Dick, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. For those that are new, Commerce Next is a community, event series, and conference for marketing, e-commerce, and technology leaders at retail and direct-to-consumer brands. Today's webinar topic is Agentic Commerce, the new era of AI-powered shopping experiences. Now, we've all heard a lot of buzz about agentic commerce. The idea of AI agents making purchases on behalf of shoppers stands to transform the entire e-commerce shopping experience. Not only will agentic commerce change the customer experience, but it's also going to impact how traffic is coming to your site. So Commerce Next wanted to cover this topic so that our community can form their own opinions about what it means for what agentic commerce means for the business and begin preparing for agentic commerce or not. As always, we'll be taking your questions, so feel free to add them to the chat. But first, I want to start with a few important thank yous and announcements in the deck. So first of all, I want to thank iAdvise for sponsoring this webinar. It has been a pleasure to partner with them on this topic. These webinars are made possible through the support of our sponsors like iAdvise. I want to thank our incredible speakers, Ed Billmeyer, Vice President of Customer Experience at Viome, Aaron Magnus, CMO at Full Glass Wine Co., Eric Fong, Lead Product Manager at Daydream, and Mike De La Cruz, President at iAdvise. I also want to thank our team, Alan, Tracy, Corey, Robert, Scott, and Jenny, who've been working tirelessly behind the scenes to make this webinar happen. And finally, I want to thank you, our audience, for joining us today and for joining us on our webinars on a regular basis. So our agenda for today is we're going to start with a presentation on Agentic Commerce by Mike, and then we're going to have some audience polls where we'll ask you a few questions about your perspective on the topic, and then we'll close with a panel discussion with Viome, Daydream, Full Glass Wine, and iAdvise. But first, I want to go through some important announcements. So we are super excited to share that Commerce Next is having a new event called the Post-Purchase Forum taking place in New York City on October 15th. It's a one-day event where we'll cover all things post-purchase, e-commerce, customer service, customer experience, loyalty, and fulfillment. If you are a director or a VP that focuses on this category, you want to make sure you apply now to be able to secure your spot early. We already have attendees from PepsiCo, Sol de Janeiro, Macy's, and so many more. But there's only 150 seats available, so you want to make sure to apply with the link in the chat. So if you missed any of our past sessions or if you want to brush up on any topic, our YouTube channel has a wealth of information. There are over 500 videos available covering digital commerce. You can find them at youtube.com/commercenext, and you can see our entire video archive there. Now, don't worry if you miss anything. We record these webinars. We usually make them available by the next day. I'm going to quickly show you where everything is on the screen, and then I'll hand it over to Mike for the presentation. So first of all, the main panel for interactivity is on the right of the screen. That is where you can chat, so you can engage with other attendees or give a shout out to our speakers. But if you have a question, we ask you to use our QA tab. And as you know, we love questions at Commerce Next. We want the audience to be an active part of this webinar. We know this is a hot topic and you all have a lot of questions about it, but we would like you to put them in the QA tab, as that will help us understand which questions we should be asking our panelists. It's a great opportunity to get your questions answered by experts who really have spent some time thinking about the topic. And then in addition to that, our QA tab has some additional functionality, lets you upvote the questions, and that just helps me prioritize which questions I should make sure we squeeze into this webinar and get answered live while we have the panelists available. Now, later on in the webinar, we'll have polls. The live polls just pop up right on the screen, but you can see the final results in the polls tab. And then finally, the last tab in this kind of interactive panel is our handouts tab. And in that section, you'll be able to download the slides from today, as well as a couple of handouts from iAdvise. And of course, if you're watching this on replay, you can find the handouts at the bottom of your player. So now I am excited to introduce Mike De La Cruz. He's the President and Chief Strategy Officer at iAdvise. He's going to share an overview of where we are with Agentic Commerce and what it means for retailers and brands. It's with great pleasure that I welcome Mike.
All right. Thank you, Veronica. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see everybody here. I'm Mike De La Cruz, President of iAdvise, and we're going to be talking about Agentic Commerce today, not just here, but this panel. It's going to be awesome. Terrific panelists. And just a quick level set on what the topic itself. We're going to keep it super simple, right? This is Agentic Commerce, and it's really when AI agents are doing more and more of the shopping on behalf of the consumer. So that's really a simple concept, but super cool topic. That doing more and more of the shopping for the consumer goes from discovery through consideration to purchase, kind of all the way through in different combinations. All right, so we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to kick off with a point of view that Agentic Commerce is here, that merchants must adapt, and they are adapting. And I'm going to share some insights into merchants that are adapting to Agentic Commerce. Hopefully give you guys a couple of nuggets to think about and to think about implementing with your organizations. Okay, so why do I say Agentic Commerce is here? Well, here's one sign, okay, just one sign. Shopping no longer starts with a search, which we've kind of accepted as a very, very common way to start shopping, even as consumers. And it now starts with an AI assistant. What we mean by that is that consumers are very likely now to start with ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini or another AI shopping assistant. In fact, multiple AI shopping assistants to begin their journey, to look at what to buy, to compare products, and really who to trust. Okay. And I know we're going to look into some data in a minute. This is just the first signal. But if you have heard from somebody lately, kind of an admission that, hey, I don't even use search that much anymore. I start with ChatGPT or Gemini or an AI assistant. It's not really a big surprise, right? And we're starting to hear this again and again because there's a change in consumer behavior. So more on that in a minute. Okay. Show me some data, Mike. Okay, so that's kind of what we're hearing, what we hear from people, what it feels like. One data point, well, actually, it's 1 trillion data points. This is from Adobe. Adobe Analytics, they did a pretty cool study, 1 trillion data points. It's how many visits they looked at to US retail sites. So it's a US topic along this. And they saw the first real material surge in traffic coming from AI assistant as a source. Okay, pretty cool. It's grown a lot. Now it's still moderate in the overall traffic, but you see tremendous growth, and it was the first time it really showed up in a big way in Adobe's data. And it's pretty interesting. Of course, it understates the influence of AI assistance on the shopping process, because this is measuring click-throughs to the retail site. So, but nevertheless, it's very, very insightful, And you want to think about this growth kind of like in relation to Moore's Law, right? Moore's Law was chips were getting more powerful every 2 years. Right now, we're seeing tremendous power in AI assistants that we're using day to day. And you also see the doubling of the generative AI traffic coming to US retail sites every 2 months. So it's like Moore's Law, but a lot faster, okay? So, and what we see when something is moving that fast and that big broadly is that it's not one technology. There's a real shift that's occurring that's a little bit bigger than the technology. And we see that really there's a new user journey. For the longest time that I can remember, there's a kind of an accepted user journey for buying things online. It's a bit like called browse and hope. Okay, and really it starts with search, but it's searching and scrolling and skimming and repeating it again. More of a loop, really, where you're clicking through to see if the blue links or the filters or the product grids or the comparison guides or the manuals or the reviews can help you. And of course, there's low conversion rates, if you look at the entire system on this, and we've grown to accept that. Okay, so this paradigm, this user journey was very, very, very dominant. And what we see really happening is a shift, a very pronounced shift to kind of a new expectation by the consumer, and it's shop for me. They're expecting the shopping assistants to do a lot more work for the consumer as compared to the browse and hope paradigm, right? And this shop for me experience is what we're talking about, where everywhere from discovery through consideration to purchase and potentially the payment, how much of that process will be done for for us by an AI system. And that's where really agentic commerce fits in. Okay, so there's a big shift from where we were in the past to shop for me, and it's clear that merchants must adapt to this new journey. Okay, we had an investor earlier in the year ask us, "Oh, is the store dead?" Well, I guess the traditional storefront that's not going to be guided with AI, maybe that's dead. Okay, but merchants are not dead, of course. Everybody knows this here. You still AI assistance for the consumer. The buyer still needs to buy from somebody. It's a tremendous opportunity for merchants that adapt, but they do have to change, the experience and their approach to this new world where, really the beginning of the journey sets an expectation as to how this journey will continue of shopping. And if the beginning of the journey is assisted by AI assistance, there's a big opportunity for merchants who embrace that trend and make sure they continue to take advantage of these technologies to satisfy their shoppers, build their following, and drive more sales. Okay, there's a great stat here, by the way, from Capgemini. Of course, this was last year, so who knows what this number is, but in a survey, they surveyed 12,000 consumers in 12 countries and found that 71% of consumers want to use generative AI to shop. And specifically, they wanted AI integrated into their shopping experiences. So I wonder what that number is now if you were to take that poll. So what we see here, merchants are adapting. And hopefully we get to see some of that today with the panel. We get to hear more and exchange some ideas on this. We're working with about 200 e-commerce brands that are on this journey. Okay, and what we see is that in the beginning, I would say very heavy emphasis in 2024. There were a lot of merchants that were experimenting with new AI chatbots. Okay, that means we're taking generative AI, we're making them kind of early shopping assistants by being able to answer questions that shoppers might have. Okay, and this was happening in mass, at least from our vantage point last year. And what we're seeing now is a shift and kind of breaking out of these text-based exchanges into more shopping type experiences, sales-oriented visual with AI shopping assistance. So we see a big change. We've actually identified 18 characteristics that differentiate between a chatbot and a shopping assistant. And what we find is a lot more companies in our install base, but outside our install base, are really going down the path of more immersive, better shopping experiences to drive more conversions. So that's where we are today. And I'm going to share some insights into some of those journeys today and what merchants are seeing with that shift. And more importantly, it gives us a little bit of a glimpse into tomorrow, where we really see this AI shopping assistant becoming the new storefront, the face of the store, as the store prepares for consumers, shoppers that are used to working with AI shopping assistants, to AI shopping assistants themselves. You're going to need a AI storefront, and we see that the AI shopping assistant actually becoming the storefront and merging with that. Okay, Three key insights from these retailers that are making the move: a lot more engagement, when they move to these shopping assistants, a lot more engagement on their shopping pages, where you have proactive AI prompts and passive chat bubbles as a contrast. We see almost a 10x engagement there. And then in the first half of this year, we took a look at all of our customers that did A/B tests. Typically, they're in the second phase of their deployment, so they're more broadly used across their site and their shopping experience. We saw kind of a nice range of 3 to 6% in terms of incremental revenue lift. Okay, so with that, we covered a lot. The point of view that agentic commerce is happening now. Merchants are adapting, some insights into them. Just leave you with one takeaway, and what we really see is this AI shopping assistant is the new storefront. Okay, and the great news is that while you're preparing for the future with an AI shopping assistant, a lot of these merchants are also generating some more incremental revenue today. Okay, so with that, I want to turn it over to Veronica to get the rest of our panel going. I think a poll first, right?
Yes, polls are first. Thank you so much, Mike. And it's interesting that your examples that you gave there, because when we had the Commerce Next Growth Show, there were two examples that I remember specifically from our Gen Z panels. One was they take a picture of themselves and then they ask the AI what glasses would look good on my face. Like, what a great experience that is. So much better than browsing through a bunch of images. And then the other one is they say, like, what colors would look good on me. So all of these things that AI is doing, like, people are using it today, and then Agentic just like furthers the process and takes those actions and essentially shops on behalf of the customers who are trying to kind of find this assistance.
Yeah, we've come a long way from how can I help you,
It's pretty amazing. All right, I'm going to jump into the polls. I'm curious what our audience has to say. The first poll question is, when will autonomous agent traffic, and what we mean by autonomous agent traffic is when AI makes the purchase with minimal human input, when will autonomous agent traffic reach 25%? Your options are end of 25, end of 26, end of 27, or 28 or later. All right, so this is amazing. So 45% of you believe that agentic traffic will reach 25% of sales by the end of 2026. So 42%, almost half. The next one is by the end of 27. We have a few optimists who believe 11% believe end of 25. And then I guess we have about 15% of people who believe it's 28 or later. So super interesting to kind of see those results. We'll close that out and go to the next question. Our second question for the retailers and brands that are on the call: how prepared is your website for AI agent visitors? A, very prepared. B, somewhat prepared. C, getting started / planning. D, not prepared at all. No changes made so far. All right, so more than half of you are getting started, 51%. The next kind of highest one with 31% is not prepared at all, and then we have somewhat prepared, and we have a few people who are very prepared. I'm curious who they are. If you're willing to raise your hand, I'd love to know what you've done to prepare. It's amazing, given how new all of this is. Now, the third question and the last question is, how do you feel about agentic commerce overall? Do you believe it's a significant opportunity, a bit of an opportunity, neutral, a threat, or a significant threat? I love this. This is a group of optimists. 38% believe it's a significant opportunity. Another 32% believe it's a bit of an opportunity, 18% neutral, and really combined, only 16% of you view it as a threat. And I think that that's a great way to look at it. It's really, like, the AI is not making the products. The AI is just changing the front end interface with how consumers are buying the product. So really interesting to see everyone's answers. Now, at this point, I want to bring on the panelists because I'm curious to hear what they have to say about all of this. This has been a pretty new and exciting topic. Welcome, everyone.
How y'all doing?
We met Mike earlier. I want to start with Ed, Aaron, and Eric. If each of you could introduce yourselves, your companies, and your respective roles. Ed, since you're on the top for me, why don't we start with you and then go to Eric and Aaron?
You got it. Ed Billmeyer, I'm the Vice President of Customer Experience at Viome. Viome is a different company. Literally, we use AI to analyze your RNA in your body, determine what supplements, nutrients you need, and design supplements for you specifically. We're getting into some really cool areas. So, for example, we're working with Scripps to validate our findings around cancer detection for colon cancer. It should be done by the end of this year, and it's going to be a huge opportunity to get ahead of big problems like that.
Awesome. Eric, you want to go next?
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Eric and I'm a product lead at Daydream. And at Daydream, we're building the first AI-powered conversational shopping platform that is exclusively focused on fashion. So I think this is where you can go and chat to shop with our agent or your personal stylist, who then helps you find things that you love. And it does the work for you, so you don't have to have 50 open tabs, spend hours trying to find that perfect dress or pair of jeans for the upcoming party. And we just launched our public beta this past June, so I encourage you to check it out.
And we already had one question from Chris Haynes. I'm going to come back to you, Aaron, 1 second, who's the VP of Content Strategy at Razorfish, and he asked for examples of brands that are currently using AI storefronts. So I'm going to point him directly to Daydream, since you're on this panel, and then maybe Mike has some other ideas for examples. Aaron, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey, I'm Aaron Magnus. I head up marketing efforts here at Full Glass Wine. If you don't know Full Glass Wine, we own and operate a number of your favorite online wine stores, including Splash, Scout and Cellar, Wink, Wine Insiders, Wine Access, and we're, quickly, as with everyone, trying to adapt to the current world, and excited to see what comes in the near future.
Amazing. So before I dig into my questions, I'm going to kind of continue with Chris's question, because he asked some examples of AI storefronts. So maybe Mike, in addition to Daydream, do you have other examples of retail or merchants that are implementing AI storefronts?
Yeah, of course. So everybody look at Daydream. So Eric's here. We'll be talking about it. So everybody should look at Daydream because it's AI native, or this agentic commerce native. It's like starting from scratch with a storefront, which is the face of the store that's agentic. So definitely take a look at it. I love it. So a couple of things, as people are going through, they're good examples. So Viome, take a look at Viome. Take a look at some of their product pages. Take a look at some of the listing pages. See what agentic means when there's AI that's prompting some good dialogue. What we can do, Veronica, is actually maybe in the material for this, add a list of links where people can just try out things. So just so everybody can check it out. But we got Viome here, we got Daydream here. So I think we're gonna get a lot of more of that as we go on.
Awesome. Now, Ed and Aaron, can you guys, and I'll start with you, Ed, can you share a perspective on how you see agentic commerce impacting your business in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years, which is interestingly enough where most people think it's going to start becoming a material part of the business, and also just share where you are today along that journey of getting ready for agentic commerce?
I think these are some great questions. In all honesty, I think it's going to be a huge impactor, and not in the long term, but in the shorter term. We've deployed iAdvise, and actually we've got it stood up. Today, we get about a 6x increase in conversion when people engage with iAdvise versus just coming to visit the site. And the agentic side of it, the AI piece, is able to answer around 95% of all the questions completely by itself with no assistance. But it actually is having a huge impact. I do believe that it's going to evolve rapidly. It'll be interesting to see how the storefront changes completely in the near future. We have an incredibly complex product. So you literally take, samples send in a test kit to us, get the results back, which then interprets and gives you tremendous detail. What do you do next? AI could literally say, aha, based on this, here's what you do. And it could 100% insert in the purchase funnel so that you're giving it those answers at the right point. A lot of times people are skeptical because it's so much information with so much detail that they don't know what to do. And so I really, really believe that this type of a tool could bridge that gap. We're also using something that is both purely customer facing as well as agent facing. So iAdvise has this great capability where as the conversation is going back and forth, it'll actually suggest answers, because customers will ask incredibly detailed questions about the results or about a specific study they may have found elsewhere. And literally that tool will help the agent so they can go, boom, here's your answer. They, of course, validate it and feed it to the customer. The difference is that it literally lasts 3 weeks, 4 weeks. All of my agent interactions have had 100% satisfaction. So you can't get much better than that. And that's very much tied to this tool's capability to understand the conversation, read our data structure, and feed them suggested answers, which they then leverage to build the conversation and promote sales.
Yeah, fascinating. And you know, Viome's obviously a complicated product. You're sending someone a test kit and then ultimately kind of directing them into products that would fit their needs. I think, Aaron, like, you know, wine is not quite as complicated, but people have a lot of questions about the wine they want to buy and what's right for them. You know, how are you guys looking at agentic commerce and how are you preparing for it?
Yeah, I'll sort of start with where we're at today. Think of our marketing stack as like a traditional DTC brand. So with that, we have the beauty of relying on these platforms to really lean into how they're approaching AI and AI challenges in the near term and in the future. But then it's on us to figure out how do we deal with all this, right? So to level set for everyone in the place, in the audience on the brand side, we're trying to figure out what's the best way to use AI for content creation. What's the best way to use AI for analytics? What's the best way to use AI for, site updates? What's the best way? So we are trying to tackle AI from so many different angles. And then agentic shopping is, am I focused on SEO, AEO, AIO? We're still trying to figure out what to even call this, right? So I think there are a number of things that we are working through. And on our side, a lot of what it is, are we setting up our data structure in a way that allows us to be found in the first place? So let's start there. And then on a site experience, how do we test in? Because there are a lot of questions. I'll say from AI on site, we're seeing more success in email CS tickets than we have been in chat, just to be clear. Like, I'll give an example. I think with email, people have to put a lot of thought into what they're asking. That allows the AI agent to actually be able to come back with a pretty intelligent answer. In more conversational, we have found some instances of it going a little sideways, like trying to solve a Walmart rebate ticket. You know what I mean? Like, it's stuff like that where everyone is still early in, even the most advanced people in this, like the Viomes, they're still so early. Right. So I think as many of us, maybe not Eric as much, has seen so many transitions in retail and commerce over, so many years of being in it. I think it's folks like Eric and what Daydream are doing that's going to just leapfrog how people are thinking about commerce in general. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Eric's getting a lot of love from the audience as well as from the other panelists. So Eric, I'm going to turn the question to you. I mean, clearly Daydream is the closest thing to a native agentic commerce brand, at least on this panel. Can you discuss kind of what are the primary consumer problems that Daydream is addressing? Is it product research? Is it discovery? Is it transaction? Is it something else? Like, why does Daydream exist and what problems are you solving?
Great question. I mean, ultimately, we want to solve all of that, but we're primarily starting with top of the funnel discovery and research. So today, if you're shopping, you might have multiple tabs open across retailer sites. You try searching on those sites, it probably sucks. Or maybe you're scrolling through Instagram or your favorite shopping aggregator platform, just doom scrolling. Or you try searching Google, but it doesn't work well because it doesn't understand shipper formal. All these different options aren't great, and you're spending a lot of time and you're not getting a lot of finding things you love. So we're focused specifically on that problem today, where if you go to Daydream with a couple of messages, a chat with our stylist, you find that thing and it's something you want to buy. And conversational language is particularly interesting here because when you talk about what you're looking for, there's a lot of nuance that we can capture and we can enrich and extract that, and then use that to search our expansive catalog. And so what we're doing is we're taking that language, enriching it, understanding you as a shopper better. And we do the same for the product catalogs as well. So we use LLMs to then enrich the products, understand them more at a more nuanced level, and we play matchmaker across those two.
Got it.
Encouraging is a lot of people are very comfortable from a conversational language perspective. So you look at what people actually type into the search box. They'll mention their height, their body type, mention that they don't like their shoulders, so they want something that doesn't reveal that. And that's been really encouraging for us as we're building here.
Yeah, as I was kind of getting ready for this webinar, I was listening to Scott Wingo's Retail Agentic podcast, and he was talking about, when you're using natural language, how much more information customers put in. Like you gave the example of, I don't want to show my shoulders, but people are like, they're kind of almost talking to the agent as if like search is just a few words, but when they're chatting, they're giving all this information to help kind of improve the experience. Eric, what have you been learning from customers so far from this kind of an experience?
I think the main one I touched on, and Veronica, you just mentioned, is in terms of what they're comfortable and willing to express. And if I double click on that, there are certain things that you just can't or won't convey through other platforms. And body type, as I mentioned, is a particularly interesting one. And it's really nuanced. It's really hard. If you're talking about body shape, things you don't like about your body or things that you do like and you want to promote, how do you then actually convert that into a useful search for someone that is using our platform? And so that's encouraging, because the biggest one is like, are we going to get input from people that's actually going to be useful, that we can actually use to help them search?
So then are you connecting all this other data? Because like people might describe their body types in different ways, for example, and then connecting that to clothes that fits those body types. I'm assuming you're just connecting all of these different data sources to be able to do that.
Exactly. And as a vertical focused solution versus, say, a ChatGPT, right? We're going much deeper in terms of our taxonomy, in terms of the enrichments that we do when it comes to what people are searching for in the products.
Got it. Now, Alex Richardson, CTO at Kite, he had a question. He asked, why wouldn't Google search AI, I guess Gemini, win the war for agentic personal shopping? I don't know, Eric, if you have a perspective on that, or Mike, I'm curious your thoughts.
I can share some thoughts and then pass it to Mike. My main one is that shopping is just very different. And if I think about Google search or again, ChatGPT, right? These are horizontal players. And so they're optimizing for the horizontal play that works for multi-use case. And eventually we do see them investing in vertical specific solutions, like Perplexity has more recently been rolling out shopping related features. But I think fashion in particular is interesting because, one, it's very visually oriented, and it's also subjective. So it's very nuanced. And how do you capture the concept of taste and preferences? And so I think that just requires a level of understanding and expertise that Google search isn't going to optimize for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, to add to that, Eric, if you look at the discovery part, so Daydream, you said, is going to very focus on the discovery part at the moment, top of funnel. That's also where Google AI search fits in. It used to be kind of like the main way you discover things, right, in search, and then now with more AI in it. Of course, that will play out. Very, very focused on shopping versus something else is something to watch. But I want to make a slightly different point, like just the concept of search and chat. Those are searching and chatting are kind of text-based exchanges. And when you look at what's happening here, I think what's going to win are shopping experiences. It's visual, it's conversion focus, it's shopping focus, it's how do you buy things, it's showing you things. It's not really a chat or a search, which is just one part of it. It's the exchange of data in natural language. And so I do think that shopping, all the things that make shopping great, the education, the content, the visuals, the recommendations, the flow of it, the feel of it, the vibe, how much fun something is. I think those are what will win the day. So that's my point of view.
And
Yeah.
just to add to that, also, I think there's some interesting nuances between, not all shopping is equal, right? Like me searching for a flight from SFO to New York is very different from me looking for a great pair of jeans that work great with this pair of shoes, that match like whatever the case is. So like, I believe going back to that question of how long before 25%, I think that is so vertical specific. There's no reason for me to click anywhere to book a flight. No offense to all the aggregators out there, but outside of whatever specific agent I'm loyal to, and whether that's Gemini or insert whatever. But I think like categories like that can succeed a lot faster. Fashion has always been, will always be hard. I mean, I used to be in marketing at Zappos 100 years ago, and it's been the same conversation forever. Like how do we find the perfect pair of jeans for her, right? So it's like that challenge, and to see here we are 20 years later, super smart people trying to tackle it. I think it's exciting. But yeah, these different categories are really interesting, and Viome, what they're doing with the data on that comes out from the test results. That is so interesting. So I think it's very nuanced based on what category you're in.
Yeah. And I think actually, Aaron, you make a really good point there, because I think one of the things that's going to start evolving is there'll be a high switching cost from whatever AI agent you're using, because you're going to convey some information. Like in your flight example, maybe you only want nonstop flights and you want extra leg room, where someone else would be like the cheapest flight, even if it adds a stop. Those are like preferences that in theory the AI agents should start learning and then get better and better at suggesting flights for you, like no early morning flights before 8 a.m., whatever. Like just think of all of these things that you've like kind of put into your preferences. And then the switching costs of going to another agent who'd have to like learn the preferences will be an interesting challenge. We have so many audience questions, so I'm going to kind of intersperse them between my questions. And one of them is from Max Tarowski, the VP of Marketplaces at Michael Stores. And the question is, how does agentic shopping change the future of marketplaces? And I think this could actually, I had a question further down that talked about the future of multi-brand retailers. I think that's particularly interesting. Will D2C/specialty destinations matter anymore than a one-stop shop versus a one-stop shop? And Mike or Eric, do you have a perspective on that? Yeah, Eric, go ahead. You're muted, just so you know.
I was going to say, Mike, you can go first.
Oh, okay. This is an interesting one, right? Everybody's got to fill in, in shifts. Everybody's got to fill in the value, any voids in value. And I do think that, for example, a direct-to-consumer brand, there's a clear picture there where you're really the authority on you, right? So what is it? What do people need? What do your consumers need? You're the authority in you, and that kind of gives you an anchor for what to go next. Marketplaces are interesting for me. We have several of the larger marketplaces in France. We're working with them. I do think that marketplaces know a lot about how to sell and kind of fill a void. And because they are shopping focused, as Eric was talking about, they are different than somebody that might be horizontally focused. And I think that's really the game here, is that how do you find and articulate and add the value that you were adding before in this new world? And there's a shift there. And I would say it's a big shift that has to happen on the marketplaces front, but it's not necessarily that it's going to go away.
Yeah, I would plus one to that. I think if I think about most marketplaces, it's really around the size of the catalog, all the products you're putting together, and then the curation aspect you put in place. And there's a tension with agents or AI, right? Because they're fairly good at both of those. They can access a lot of things, and then they can help filter the signal through the noise. And so if I'm a marketplace, I'm thinking about what are the additional value adds that I have on top of that. Or also thinking about just the user and understanding the user more deeply. So if I have more of their transactions, how can I use that to inform how I'm curating, presenting products to them?
I think that's the interesting point there is, particularly like let's use wine space. 80% of people, they go into to buy wine and they have a price point and they have a color preference. Then you add a little bit more that may know the varietal that they're looking for. But we have all the data. We should get smarter to be able to tease out, oh, the sage leather notes from these specific wines that they rated highly. Then how do we curate a better experience for that customer when they are either coming back or pushing notifications? So I think part of it is, one, setting up for new visitors in a interesting, intelligent way that brings people an engaging moment. But then the real unlock for marketplaces or multi-brand retailers is really, how do we use that? And then how do we make that a better experience for bringing people back for things that they don't even realize?
Yep, absolutely. I want to kind of go back to discovery for just a second and then come back to kind of how we're getting ready. We talked about marketplaces specifically, they've been in some cases like storefront gatekeepers, but how do you think ultimately, and Ed, I want to start with you on this one, how do you think agentic commerce is going to change how people research and discover products they want? Does it change the role of like some of the traditional gatekeepers like Meta and Google? Like how does discovery change in this agentic world?
To be honest with you, I don't know how those organizations exist in the future with their current model. I think it'll have a huge revolutionary type change. I'm sure that they'll adapt within their processes, but even thinking about a brand website. So if someone does come to your brand website, if we look at our existing website today, it's designed around traditional commerce. How do you actually inject AI into the actual user experience? We're doing something very interesting with the tool we have in place today, where we're trying to, based on the section of the page, interject common questions that we know that typically people have. That's a way to kind of get them into the AI conversation. But thinking about customer experience and depending on their comfort levels, again, that's simple bubbles. You click on a bubble, get your answer, and then you can ask more questions. But if you're going as far as like with Eric and his team, what they've built, that's like a huge revolutionary change. And so we'll have to really think through about how could that live on our site? Do we mirror it? Do we have a section of the site? Like I think about it from us, I've got a stomach problem. If you come to a site, how do we make it super simple to get into, hey, here's your solution to the stomach problem, and here's what we recommend, versus marketing, which is kind of what we do today. Yell, get more specific faster. That's what we need to figure out how to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric, any thoughts on your end here?
Not much to add. Maybe I'll just connect what Aaron and Ed mentioned. So as Aaron mentioned, if you have the user preferences in the history, right, and then you're good about identifying the problem, then we move from you even having a conversation to the agent's more proactive. I already know in your calendar, you've got the wedding coming up. I know you like this kind of dress, right? It's at your doorstep the next day. So that's all I've got to add to that one.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great addition. I think there's all information and context that I otherwise is not available. Let's talk about like what you're doing to get your site ready for AI agents. Galia, Executive Director at Velocity Digital, her question, this question's been upvoted. It says, what's a high level framework to create an AI shopping storefront, and what's the best way to speed to market? I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand to answer that question. So what's the high level framework for creating an AI shopping storefront, and what's the best way to get to market fast?
Yeah, maybe I can volunteer a start to this framework. I think we got great panelists, but the start of this framework is if you don't have an AI shopping assistant, there's a very clear start. I think you want to embrace this idea that you want to put an AI shopping assistant on your site. It should be about selling and about better experiences. It should be visual. You can take a look at Rufus. It's kind of embedded, in Amazon, or you can look at Daydream. You can think about how that would be for your site. Embrace some kind of a shopping assistant, because that's going to get you ready. You're going to think about how your data has to be. You're going to think about your value proposition. You're going to think about, what that maybe a multi-brand retailer doesn't know or Google doesn't know, and it's going to make you ready. And when there is a time, I personally think there's still going to be a lot of shopping to the consumer, but a time that you've got agents that are doing the shopping, well, you're going to be ready for that too. So I feel like that's a very good place to start.
Having an AI agent.
Just you'd probably just add, right? Like, you need clean data. right? Like that has to be important. How do we think about meta field? How do we make sure that things are structured in a way that makes sense for these tools to use? Because you even brought up like Rufus and Sparky. I don't know about anyone else. They have some of the biggest teams, the most intelligent people working on them. They're not great experiences today. So like, or even Google saying, oh, look at our adoption of Gemini. Well, when you just make every search result a Gemini, of course you're going to, go through the roof. So I think there's some things there where, if we have clean data, it allows these tools to better be able to interact and organize, which then make a better customer experience, and then you build off from there.
Yeah, Aaron, you know a lot about wine. Ed, you know a lot about the health tests and people's health. You know a lot about apparel, Eric. So it's like, it's that kind of thing where it's like, how can it, when it's about the data, how can horizontal players don't know any of these things create the ultimate experience? Everybody here that's listening, that everybody here is on the panel, they have a way to really kind of jump on this opportunity. And it's really just about getting yourself in order and jumping into it. So.
And Aaron, I'm glad you mentioned the data, because I think that's obviously, it's a critical part. It's like, I feel like the underlying infrastructure of e-commerce today, even for search, but more important in an agentic world. I want to tie it to Gavansa's question. Gavansa Green asked, she's a CMO of Positive Promotions, and she asked, Eric, what type of data enrichment do you do? But I want to kind of augment that question just a little bit, because one of the things that the Retail Agentic podcast mentioned is with AI agents, and just even with Gen AI, it's not just about the feed and your data. They're also crawling the web and seeing what other people may have said about your product. So it becomes like the whole universe of information that's out there about your product in some cases. So I guess, like, what do you do for data enrichment, and how do you ensure that that universe of information that's out there about the product is delivering the right message to the customer, that so that they can discover the product for the right type of needs?
Yeah, on this one, it really starts with the customer problem and how they think about shopping, for instance, right? So this is where it's helpful to understand in the conversations, how do people talk about body type? How do they think about the problem they're trying to solve? And then based on that, that's how we think about the framework for which we do data enrichment. So if people describe their body type based on, is it pear-shaped, is it something else? Then the data enrichment needs to match that, so that when we do look at what people are asking for, right, we can line up the two. So that's the main one. And I think that also ties into the earlier question around AI storefronts and the data point that Aaron made, which is, once you understand the use case, over time, the sort of contract between you as a store, retailer, or merchant and whatever platform is going to become more structured. And so getting your data in place and kind of seeing where that framework is going to come along will help you be prepared as things evolve.
Awesome. Any other thoughts, additions to this question? I want to go to Luke's question, because Luke Grant, advisory board member at Scrollmark, he asked, what are the implications for customer personalization? He's assuming that agents are bringing in past shopping session data to enhance the recommendations. I guess if I want to reframe that question, like historically, the retailers have had the data to personalize the experience. If the agents are going to be the holders of the personal information, what does that mean for the merchants who are selling the products, and how do they kind of use that for loyalty and customer retention? Any thoughts? Hard questions.
I would lean back into, again, I think that is the unlock, right? Like, I don't know, I'll just keep it close to our space, but, we might be able to infer what people's diets are, what they like to make for dinner, how frequently they have group gatherings, consistently around, here's a great single bottle of high value wine, or here's a pack because obviously there's a barbecue coming up that, you don't really want to think about what your guests are drinking. So like, I think it comes down to, on our side, as a brand, how do we take advantage of the information that we have and create great experiences so that the customer doesn't even know, right? Like in a perfect world, they don't know. It's like when you go into your 100 years ago, I'm sure people went into stores and the person knew your name and then they welcomed you and they knew exactly what you wanted, right? So I think the unlock happens when you go to a website or an interface, and it knows what you are looking for based on all the previous information that you've already told it. So it should know that, well, you need an outfit because you've got your wedding coming up. You know, you want to make sure you're healthy before that. So here's a great test. And while you're getting ready, you should have a glass of wine, right? Like, you can do all these things if you've told and entrusted a lot of information with some of these agent partners.
Yeah, I even take a little bit, Aaron's 100% correct. And if you think about it, great example of this is what we're trying to do. So as part of with your analysis, we also tell you, based on your RNA and how your microbes are using the food, here's what you should eat and here's what you should avoid. So literally we're taking it to, when you come to the site or to our app, personalization to an extreme level. Here's your recipes based on what you specifically need based on your bio. We're not selling something there. It's building a trust into the entire relationship. I think it'll be interesting to see where it goes, because we're literally on the cutting edge of some of this stuff. The data is incredible, but what do you do with the insight? How do you then build a personalized interaction when they contact you? How does that all fit together so that if they do talk to an agent or talk to a live person, they understand the history of what the conversations are, what you're doing, and then how do we expand to other devices outside, like Apple Watches, the Oura Ring, as an example. To me, it's like, those are awesome opportunities that we're like, could we actually understand, are they doing these things? And then becomes a tremendous ecosystem of insight.
Yeah, and it's almost like companies like Viome or Aura become like gatekeepers of data that then can help inform all these other search, like, or kind of agent experiences. Because if you know that someone has certain health concerns, then you can kind of be a more educated kind of shopping advisor for them beyond the products that Viome sells directly.
100%.
Very interesting. Now, quick question on the customer experience. We talked about loyalty and personalization, but who's the merchant of record in these cases with these agent-like experiences? And how do you handle things like, if you can, in theory, build a shopping cart across multiple brands, how do you handle things like returns? Eric, do you want to start with this one? I know you guys have thought about it at Daydream.
That one's, we're not the merchant of record. And I think that one's just very tricky and sort of gets at the customer relationship, right? Is the customer building a relationship with the brand, the aggregator, the platform, the aggregator of the platform, or with the brand? Because ultimately the platform's going to be on the hook for that experience, even if the brand is fulfilling it. So that's one of the reasons we're not the merchant of the record, because we'd want to do that to a very high level, and we wouldn't be able to at this point in time. And I don't quite know how it's going to evolve. I think that's still one of the opportunities for why the relationship to the brand or the store still matters a lot.
And Eric, you don't want to deal with inventory. Trust me. Yeah, as long as you don't deal with the inventory. But I think, like Sam Altman, he publicly said, right, like, I could see us taking a commission as opposed to, being upfront in this. And I think, that probably makes sense from a tools perspective.
And I guess one related question I wanted to kind of bring up in that, Dave Phillips, principal consultant at Omnico Consulting, asked how you're mitigating fraud risk if agents are making actual purchases using their owners or someone else's payment information. Another kind of interesting operational challenge in this world of agents. Anyone thought about that one?
From our side, they still have to go through the checks that are necessary to be able to make a purchase. So it's seamless from our perspective.
Got it. And I think ultimately, even like, as I understand, OpenAI did a partnership with Shopify. They still haven't, put a lot of detail around that partnership. So it seems like regardless, they're using kind of standard carts, which have fraud protections built in. It's just that the transaction might be happening at a different point in the kind of discovery process. So a lot of things to still figure out. Eric, I'm going to direct Andy's question to you, and then I want to kind of close with what the future has in store. So Andy Solomon, president of Windsor Fashion, asked, he's curious how Daydream is dealing with the rapidly changing inventory. So this is something that Aaron mentioned as well, and how you're integrating retailers' real-time inventory, or are you just scraping sites?
Great question. And to answer the last part directly is like, we do a combination of real-time, of getting direct integrations, as well as the scraping piece where it makes sense. And this gets back to the data quality or contract, right? A lot of our inputs in terms of our product catalog are not great. And so we clean it up, we transform it. And I think that's an opportunity because we do have shoppers that might search on the site and maybe the data says the size is available and it's actually not. And so that's a poor customer experience. And so that's something we work closely with the brands to close the gap on the data quality and the real-timeness of the data.
Awesome. Well, I want to, for the last question, we have so many audience questions, and I apologize in advance for us not being able to answer all of them. I want to take a moment just to look into the future and ask all of you, what do you think the timeline, the audience gave us their thoughts on the timeline for Agentic Commerce. What do you think the timeline is for Agentic Commerce? When will it be a reality? And I'm going to add one more. What aspect of Agentic Commerce are you most excited about? And Ed, I'm going to start with you.
Honestly, I think it's now. I think it's starting to happen right now. I don't know when we'll hit the 25% mark. That's a big question about customer adoption and willingness to go there. And what was the second question? I'm sorry.
When will it be a reality? And then what are you most excited about when it comes to Agentic Commerce?
To me, it's about the possibility of engaging people differently. So today, when you go to a site, any site, not just Viome or anything else, there's so much information. And typically it's a marketing page, which is 5,000 feet long, where if you want to find that detail, it's on the page, but it's buried. This has the opportunity to actually elevate the content based on what the customer is specifically interested in. So it could cut out the confusion that occurs when people are trying to figure out this specific nuance based on their interests, their moments, their fill in the blank, their history. So I think it can really elevate and change and make life easier, tremendously easier. And quite frankly, it has the potential to get rid of all the noise. I know today when I search for Google, I almost don't use Google to search anymore because most of what I get is ads and it's not what I want. And I want to get to that answer and that nugget of the best, whatever it is, has the potential to do that if it's done effectively.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. Eric, what would you like to add to that?
The part I most agree on the timeline, super fast, super early right now. The part I'd add is I like the idea where everyone has their personal sommelier or stylist or doctor in all of these verticals, right? That's pretty cool because I know I can't afford a personal stylist. So having one through an agent is perfect for me.
Aaron?
Yeah, I think I'll add it's happening fast, but to the point I made earlier, uneven adoption. I think some categories will move faster than others once it makes sense. But what that means to me is brand really matters. Because the example I gave, I'm traveling San Francisco to New York. I still want United. I still want Marriott. Right. So brand matters. And as marketers, it's our responsibility to lean in there. And I think the thing that I'm most excited about is we are so early to steal from Bezos. It's day one. And to me, the unknown and the excitement around how quickly things are changing and how drastically they will change over the next, weeks, months, days, whatever the measurement is so exciting. And how what I found in our little ecosystem of retail and e-commerce is everyone wants to help. So there's no, we're all learning together. So that to me is just very, very exciting.
Yeah. And your generosity on speaking on this webinar helps all of us kind of get quicker and in learning all about this. So thank you for that. Mike, final thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you take kind of the whole shopping experience, if you take something like top of funnel, what we were talking about, like discovery, I think that was yesterday. That was yesterday, and there's consideration. A lot of that is happening right now where people are, really using this to evaluate things. Now, actually making the purchase with the brand, that's maybe for later. Okay, in terms of the bell curve of where people are. So I do think it's moving very fast, and it's going step by step. And people are going to be, unless you're kind of a new startup and you're able to start with this right away, which is a great thing about a startup, you're going to start with where you are, like taking your product pages, making them more agentic, taking your checkout page, making them more agentic. And so you're going to go down this path, and you're going to see different merchants go at different speeds. I do think that next year, okay, you guys can think about this, 18 months from now, I think any shopping experience that isn't assisted by AI, it's going to feel like dial-up.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to look at it and say, that's like dial-up. Wow, what was dial-up again? You know, I do think that 18 months from now, that's going to happen. Now, what part of the funnel is it? There's going to be different parts of the funnel. And, you know, there is going to be some reluctance, and it'll take some time for people to say, to totally delegate my checkbook to an agent to just buy whatever you want, if you will. So that might take some time, but every part of this funnel will move.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Ed, Aaron, Eric, Mike, thank you for joining us, for sharing your insights on Agentic Commerce. We had so many audience questions and so many attendees because clearly this is a hot topic. So we are grateful for you taking the time and sharing your perspective. Robert, if you can quickly put up my last slide, I want to run through the commerce next steps. So I just wanted to quickly summarize kind of what we discussed on this call. At this point, is to get ready for Agentic Commerce, you want to make your product data and APIs agent ready. Build trust signals for both agents and humans. And that means strengthen your UGC, solidify fulfillment, look at your return policies. And then last, experiment with agent-like experiences now. You know, Mike said everyone should have an agent, and gets you used to structuring the data the right way, being able to answer questions, and being able to talk to other agents. It's going to make you that much more ready for the agentic future. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon.